As we begin this third hour of the show, we talk about firefighters. Being a firefighter, it's not an easy job. We saw an example of this all too recently with the death of Pierre Lacroix. He's 58. He died in the line of duty during a rescue operation in the Lachine Rapids on October 17th. But aside from the risks that happen when firefighters go into dangerous situations, there's also the risks that come from just the job itself, the beating fires on a daily basis. There are toxic materials, smoke inhalations, and that leads to an even greater risk of getting sick. With more on this, we go to Chris Ross, president of the Montreal Firefighters Association, rejoining us on the program. Hi, Chris.
Good morning, Elias. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Listen, I know it must be heartwarming to see the outpouring of emotion directed towards Montreal firefighters in the last couple of weeks in light of the death. You have my condolences, by the way, on losing one of your colleagues.
Thank you very much.
Now, I want to talk about the situation here with firefighters being at increased risks of occupational cancer. What are you seeing within your ranks? How big of a problem is this?
It's definitely a growing problem. You know, some of the numbers that I do like to throw out there is the fact that it is getting larger and larger. Over the last 30 years, we've had 48 of our members that have died from what's been recognized by the CNSST and the Quebec government as being a work-related illness, typically cancer. And 48 over 30 years might not seem like a lot, but it's really in the last couple of years that started to show up. And in 2020, we had 10 members that were diagnosed with a cancer that was recognized as being work-related. So it's something that's becoming exponential. We're seeing it happen more often. We're seeing it happen to younger members. Then we're seeing members get types of cancer that are a lot harder to treat. They tend to be more resistant, and the death rate tends to be higher than normally.
Is there any reason why we're seeing that increase? Are there any ideas, inklings as to why that is?
Well, definitely one of the things that we're seeing is the difference in the compositions that exist in burning buildings now. You know, over the years, the materials changed a lot. We've gone from solid wood to wood composites that are held together with glue. They're held together with other petrochemicals. All of your furniture now, from the sofas to the desks, to the walls, to your entire building, will now be an engineered product that has some sort of a petrochemical base in it. Those petrochemical products tend to be extremely toxic when they burn. They give off a lot of toxic gases that aren't always visible, and that physically attack skin, moist skin, hot skin, which tends to be quite common when you're a firefighter and you're on the scene of an emergency intervention.
So if we have these different materials that may be adding to risk, in my head, I immediately go to, okay, so how do you protect against that, right? And I'm thinking, the masks and all, the protective equipment. Can that really, do you have the equipment that you need in order to deal with these, whether it's noxious fumes or anything else?
That's a very good question. And, throughout the years, the science gets better, our knowledge gets better. We thought for many years that these cancers were largely probably related to the smoke that was being inhaled. Mm-hmm. So we concentrated over the last 20 years on the airway protection and wearing face masks and all that. And what we're noticing is it's not specifically having an impact on the reductions in the level of cancers and the number of cases that we're seeing. The latest studies that are coming out now, what they demonstrate is that it's really skin absorption. Even if we do a controlled burn and we ensure that there's no way in hell any of those chemicals could have been breathed in, we're still finding, immediately toxic levels in the blood as well as the urine.
Do we know how many cancers can be linked to these kinds of conditions, these types of materials? Do we have any idea?
This is really a province by province, I think, rule that you have to look at because, there are a lot of cancers that are related to firefighting, but not every province recognizes the same number of cancers. Our neighboring province in Ontario has 16 cancers that they directly associate with firefighting. In Montreal, the list is a lot smaller. It's really only about 6 or 7. And it's numbers and cancers that we've only started to get recognized in the last couple of months with Bill 59 that was recently adopted. So the numbers in Montreal, I think, are artificially low. If we had as generous as a list of illnesses recognized in Quebec as that were recognized in Ontario and many other provinces across Canada, we probably have a lot higher number than what we see now.
With Chris Ross, he's president of the Montreal Firefighters Association. We're talking about the occupational cancers that more and more Montreal firefighters are being affected by. With regards to that list, the number and the difference you mentioned with Ontario and us of the cancers that are recognized, what does that change for firefighters when it comes to how they're treated once they get cancer, or maybe it's benefits, stuff like that, long-term disability, all of that? Does that change anything if certain cancers are not recognized as being connected to the profession?
What you'll see in that, and it's the notion of what we call presumption. It's presumed to be related to your occupation as a firefighter. That's what the law brings along. Without that presumption, you can still have your cancer recognized under Quebec law, but you have to demonstrate individually that your specific cancer is definitely related to firefighting. That's something that requires medical experts, doctors, lawyers, and we took it upon ourselves in Montreal probably about 10 years ago to say, you know what, we're not going to look at what it costs anymore. We're going to start contesting these cases, and we're going to try to win them in court because that's what's going to demonstrate there's a problem. Originally, what we were being told is, well, there are no cases of cancer among firefighters. And, well, of course, there were no cases. No one was asking for recognition because it wasn't recognized. But you can easily put 150, 175,000 into a case of having one cancer recognized. What it changes is that, unfortunately, many of those firefighters, they don't survive to see the outcome. We've been very fortunate in Montreal that we've won every single court case that we've taken on over the years, but many of those members are no longer alive when we actually win the court case. So, it comes a little bit too little, too late. There's a benefit for the family, and they do get a certain amount of compensation, but that firefighter suffered for a very long time, not knowing if his family was going to be taken care of or not.
So you're winning every court case. Who's the fight against, Chris? If you keep winning these court cases, who's putting up the fight, the barriers on proper compensation?
Well, that always starts at the provincial level. The health and safety laws are a provincial law, and they determine what's recognized as a cancer. So when they render a decision refusing, say, a cancer that is recognized elsewhere across the country or across North America, that decision has to be contested. So you're contesting the CNSST, the provincial government, and the City of Montreal will always be a party of that because they're the employer. We've had a very good collaboration with Montreal over the years, specifically the last couple of years with Valerie Plante, but it still implies you do have to go to court. And we probably take 1 to 2 cancer cases to court on an annual basis. Sometimes we settle out of court, but otherwise it goes to the end, and it sometimes takes 2 to 3 years, and the decision comes out, unfortunately, after the firefighters passed away.
Is this a result of bureaucracy following the science? Do you think eventually you'll get to the point where the bureaucracy catches up to science?
I should hope so, because when I started this fight, when I became vice president of the union in 2011, Quebec and a few other provinces, specifically Atlantic and the Northwest Territories, didn't have any legislation for firefighters. So, we weren't alone, but in those years, every single jurisdiction across Canada now has presumptive legislation for firefighters. And the ones that started this many, many years ago, they've added to the list. They've added extra cancers. They removed the criteria for those cancers being recognized. So there's been a lot of movement. There's still a lot of work left to do in Quebec, though.
With the knowledge of this extra risk and the knowledge of cancers that can be connected to the profession, do you see any firefighters within your ranks that say, okay, you know what, maybe I'm going to get out of firefighting because of that?
The only time we've seen that is it's sort of been in limited cases. I remember a few years ago, we had a couple of cases of asbestosis. So contamination of the lungs based on an exposition to asbestos. And we had a department-wide screening policy. Everyone could go for x-rays and see what damage there were in their lungs. But we did have a few members that when the x-rays came back, they turned around and said, look, I don't have anything now, but you can see something's really not going good with my lungs. They decided to take a step back from operation. So, we're fortunate that we do have a couple of positions in the fire department. 99% of them are the guys on the trucks that are going to calls on a daily basis. But we have 50 or 60 office positions. We did have a few people during that period turn around and say, I want to remove myself from that risk for the few years that I have left, and I'm going to go work in an office for the 3-4 years that I have left.
Chris Ross is president of the Montreal Firefighters Association. Thanks so much for taking the time for us this morning.
It's my pleasure. You have a good day.